So this is a custom home that I completed in 2024 in Alachua and Alachua Highlands subdivision, also known as Santa Fe Farms, right off of 241. This house is 2651 square feet heated and cooled and 4393 total. It's a 3-bed, 2.5 bath with a bonus room. And the plan was designed by Jennifer Langford. So my clients that I wound up building for got with Jennifer to draw their plan before I signed a contract with them. And Jennifer, she helped design Hale Village. Is one of the main designers of Hale Village back in the 90s. And if you've ever been at Hale Village, it's very traditional, and it's got a lot of Southern charm to it. So a lot of, Jennifer's kind of known for that in a lot of her plans. There's a lot of charm in them. And so we see some of that come out in some of the details that she spec'd on this house. And so, one of the good examples of that are for the hardy plank siding on this home, she called out a 5-inch reveal. So the majority of hardy board siding used, in our area and really the whole Southeast is 7.25-inch siding with a 6-inch reveal. Well, she called out 6.25-inch siding with a 5-inch reveal, which just makes a little bit of a difference. We're used to seeing 6-inch hardy reveals on, the vast majority of homes. So whenever you change up that siding reveal, kind of creates a little bit of a unique look. And so, she called that out on this plan. We have a 612 hip roof, which is pretty typical, but she called for oversized overhangs that cantilevered out, which is a nice feature. And then we also went with a stem wall in this house. And so, because of the slope of the property, we actually wound up, lower in the back and then really high in the front, which we wound up backfilling to kind of, make that fall off from the porch not so steep. But she called for a stucco finish. We did a sand stucco finish on the stem wall around the whole house. But you can tell looking at this plan that it fits the vibe of what Jennifer Langford typically goes for with her designs. So for some of the finish of this house, we went with Certainty Landmark Colonial Slate shingle roofing. I prefer Certainty Landmark. In that class, it is one of the heaviest, most durable shingles. So I like to go with Certainty Landmark. For the exterior wall color, we went with the network gray. And then for all the exterior trim, so, the fascia color, the corner trim, window trim, door trim, we went with Sherwin-Williams Pure White, which is my favorite white trim color to go with because it goes really well with, white gutters, and it goes really well with white garage doors. So that's what we went with for the exterior trim color. And then so coming to the interior of the house, this is a pretty typical open floor plan, where you've got the great room opened up to the kitchen. And, there's some, little variations here, but, it's pretty typical when you walk in the front door from what you're going to see on most homes that are built in 2025, at least country style homes. And there's a couple little interesting things about it. When you come in to the left, we've got a little living room area with this built-in bookshelf. It's kind of like what you would have seen back in the 80s or 90s being, more like a set living room area separate from the great room. But in this case, it's all, because if it's an open concept 2025 home or 2024 home, it's all kind of opened up to each other. So, we have this, extra sitting area. So there's a lot of, seating at this house for meals and for holidays. So, a lot of homes now are combining the dining room and breakfast nook, but, you'll have seating at this house in the breakfast area, at the island. And also in the formal dining room. So it's great for hosting, big events or, holidays, a lot of family. So it's one of the interesting things at this house. And we also have a bonus room here. So, we have a nice bonus space with a bathroom upstairs that can be used as an office or, guest room or what have you. And then, so a couple of other little interesting things, we got a really large master shower. It's a roll-in. So the homeowners here wanted to think for the future, for when they get retirement age or if there is any, anything to worry about in the future, and they wanted to plan for that. So we planned on doing a roll-in shower in the master. And then because there's no tub in the master, we actually have a tub and a shower in the guest bath, which you don't see a whole lot of. And so in general, this is a pretty typical, 2024, open concept floor plan. Lots of windows. There's letting in lots of natural light. We hit a lot of the, key features that people look for on modern plans. And then so for some of the interior finishes, we went with vinyl plank flooring for the interior floors, which is, very popular in 2024. You know, most of my houses are going to have vinyl plank flooring just because of the durability. You know, people like the idea that it's waterproof, you know, that it's not going to, if there is a dishwasher leak, that it's not necessarily going to, you know, ruin the floors throughout the house. And it's also a little bit softer on your feet than tile. So the luxury vinyl plank is very popular in 2024. And, you know, we went with, you know, solid wood cabinets, you know, quartz countertops in the kitchen, porcelain tile in the bathroom. So, you know, this house will be a little bit of a combination of large format tiles and decorative pattern tiles. You know, both of these are really popular and is what we use on most of my houses. For the interior walls, we went with Sherwin-Williams Oyster White, which is a nice, you know, easy to look at wall color. This is, you know, along the same vein of what most people go with in 2024. You know, nothing too aggressive, just something that, you know, flows easily. It kind of blends in. And for the interior trim color, you know, we went with pure white again. You know, so that's for all baseboards, door trim, window trim. You know, we case out all the windows in this house, being a traditional, you know, country looking home. We case the windows. And so on this, you know, the interior wall finish was skip trowel, sheetrock and plaster finish. That's what I do on almost all my houses is a sheetrock and plaster, which is not as popular. You know, if you go to almost any other part of the country, you're going to see, you know, some kind of a drywall finish, whether it's orange peel or knockdown or smooth walls. But here we use sheetrock and plaster, which is kind of just a regional thing. And in the Gainesville area specifically, you see a lot of sheetrock and plaster, and that's what, you know, the finishers grow up doing here. So it's a more durable finish, and that's what we did on this home. You know, another key feature of this house are the large porches. I mean, we got a huge back porch, huge front porch, you know, and with all these, you know, beautiful trees and nice property, and, you know, it's really gonna be great to be able to sit out here on these porches. You know, on the back porch, we wound up screening it in. And on the front porch, the homeowner added railings on, you know, partially because of that fall we were talking about, you know, the slope of the property. The front porch is higher out of the ground than the back porch was, so we wound up adding these rails to it. It's really nice to sit out here on these porches, you know, once the homeowners get moved in. So yeah, you know, thanks for checking out this video. You know, I'm gonna be posting more in the future of other homes I've built, and then also on my website, you know, I'm gonna have tons of photo albums of previous projects. So, you know, check that out. And if you have any questions, you know, leave a comment, you know, below, or, you know, I'm gonna put my telephone number in the description. You know, just give me a call.